to extend the funding through February 16th. President Donald Trump is insisting the budget include money for his proposed US-Mexico border wall. Democrats are also making demands. They say the bill should include a measure to stop the deportation of undocumented immigrants who entered the US as children. Trump took to his favoured social media platform to lash out at his political opponents. He tweeted, "Dems want a shutdown in order to help diminish the great success of the tax cuts and what they're doing for our booming economy." As the midnight deadline loomed, Trump called off a planned trip to Florida and met with the Democratic Senate leader. The two tried to strike a last-minute deal, but they made little headway. The shutdown is the first for the federal government since 2013.
Perhaps across the aisle, some of our Democratic colleagues are feeling proud of themselves. But what has their filibuster accomplished? What has it accomplished? The answer is simple. Their very own government shutdown. What we've just witnessed on the floor was a cynical decision by Senate Democrats to shove aside millions of Americans for the sake of irresponsible political games. The government shutdown was 100% avoidable, completely avoidable. Now it is imminent. All because Senate Democrats chose to filibuster a non-controversial funding bill that contains nothing, not a thing they do not support. Nothing they do not support. Perhaps across the aisle, some of our Democratic colleagues are feeling proud of themselves. But what has their filibuster accomplished? What has it accomplished? The answer is simple. Their very own government shutdown. Shutdown effects on the American people will come as no surprise. All week, as we've stood on the floor and begged our colleagues to come to their senses, Senate Republicans have described exactly what this will mean.
President Trump, if you are listening, I am urging you, please take yes for an answer. The way things went today, the way you turned from a bipartisan deal, it's almost as if you were rooting for a shutdown. Republican leadership can't get to yes because President Trump refuses to. Mr. President, President Trump, if you are listening, I am urging you, please take yes for an answer. The way things went today, the way you turned from a bipartisan deal, it's almost as if you were rooting for a shutdown. And now we'll have one. And the blame should crash entirely on President Trump's shoulders. This will be called the Trump shutdown. This will be called the Trump shutdown because there is no one who deserves the blame for the position we find ourselves in more than President Trump.
With the prospect of his first government shutdown looming, President Trump dispatched his budget director to start making plans for the worst.
OMB is preparing for what we're calling the Schumer shutdown.
The nickname, the Schumer shutdown, is an effort by the White House to deflect any responsibility if the deadline hits with no agreement. Mick Mulvaney pointing out that there is nothing in the temporary spending bill that the Democrats oppose.
There are 4 clean CRs. They're for the extension to the CHIP program. Many of them support the delay in some of the taxes, most specifically the medical device tax, the Cadillac tax especially. They don't oppose anything in the bill, but they are opposing the bill.
Of course, what the Democrats want is for the continuing resolution to address the plight of the so-called Dreamers. Protections under DACA are slated to end on March 5th. White House Legislative Affairs Director Mark Short says the Democrats are missing a very important point.
There is not legislation to vote on. So when they say we need to have DACA solved before you do a continuing resolution to keep the government open, there isn't actually a bill for them to even vote on, which I think shows that this is really about politics and not really about policy.
Negotiations for a fix to DACA are ongoing, and the two sides are said to be making progress, despite the setback caused by Senators Dick Durbin and Lindsey Graham's attempt at an end run around the process last week that led to that now infamous Oval Office meeting. The White House charges that by insisting DACA be a part of the spending bill, Democrats are doing what they condemned Republicans for in 2013 when they insisted that defunding Obamacare be part of a CR.
In 2013, we are accused by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer of inserting a non-fiscal, a non-financial issue into the spending process in order to shut the government down. How is that not exactly what is happening today? There is no reason that you have to deal with DACA this week.
Chuck Schumer said at the time, it's sort of like this. Someone goes into your house, takes your wife and children hostage, and then says, let's negotiate over the price of your house. In essence, that's the same tactic they're deploying.
I really believe the Democrats want to shut down to get off the subject of the tax cuts because they've worked so well. Nobody thought, including the Democrats, they could work this well. They've been so good that I think the Democrats would like to see us shut down in order to get off that subject.
OMB is preparing for what we're calling the Schumer shutdown. It still surprises me, and I've been through some of these before, that the Democrats in the Senate are opposing a bill that they don't oppose. They're for clean CRs. They're for the extension to the CHIP program. Many of them support the delay in some of the taxes, most specifically the medical device tax, the Cadillac tax especially. They don't oppose anything in the bill, but they are opposing the bill. I just want to let everybody know that we don't want this. We do not want a shutdown. But if Mr. Schumer insists on it, he is in a position to force this on the American people. From an OMB perspective, because we're involved in managing a lapse or a shutdown, and we want to make folks understand that it will look very different than it did under the previous administration. One of the things that I've learned since I've been in this office is that there's no other way to describe it, but the Obama administration weaponized the shutdown in 2013. What they didn't tell you was that they did not encourage agencies to use carry forward funds that they were sitting on, nor did they encourage agencies to use transfer authority. They could have made the shutdown in 2013 much less impactful, but they chose to make it worse. The only conclusion I can draw is they did so for political purposes. So it will look different this time around.
Possible compromise. I think everybody in Washington was listening very closely to what Chuck Schumer said. One, he said progress was made in his talks with President Trump, and two, that discussions continue. To me, what that says is that this is going to go on till late this evening, and not now, not 8, 9, probably 11 o'clock tonight. They're going to decide, is there enough progress that they should avoid a shutdown, have a continuing resolution, not for 4 weeks. They'll never pass the House bill, but for maybe 4 days. And, continue these conversations, say if they can arrive at a deal. And if they think that there is a potential way out of this, then they will keep the government open. If they really don't, then they're going to shut down the government. And I think if they shut down the government, that's going to last a while.
Tell me what you've heard, Chris. Here's what I've heard from a couple of Senate Democrats, and just heard, as a matter of fact, in the last hour on with Dana Perina from Chris Coons. And that was that they want to do some separating. Give us a few days in order to be able to separate out a deal for DACA, in other words, the Dreamers, get something together on that, get something separate on the children's health insurance program, something they could have done separately from this, and then get a budget deal with those two matters on the side. Some real negotiating and real governing. That's my understanding.
Well, yeah, but first of all, the Republicans at this point, and again, I think it all depends on how these negotiations between Democrats and the White House go. If Republicans up till now have rejected the idea of a short-term CR, 4 or 5 days, only if there is a sense that they're making progress and that they can get a deal at the end of this will they kick the can down the road into next week. And that's all it will be. And as you say, time to do some legislating, time to actually write a DACA bill. There isn't a bill as it exists. There was a potential deal, but not a bill. But if they don't see that by 11/12 tonight, they're going to shut down the government.
There's peril in this politically, Chris, as you no doubt know. I've read in the Washington Post this morning, as I'm sure you did, this new poll that shows Americans blame Democrats 48% and Republicans 28% on this. Usually, if you're the party in power, especially all over town, you get the blame, usually.
It's very complicated. When they say, who would you blame for a shutdown, most people blame the Republicans. When they say, who would you blame for a shutdown if the reason for the shutdown was to make a deal on DACA to protect the Dreamers, then a lot more people blame the Democrats. So, and that's part of the problem here, is that usually it's pretty clear which side is going to get the blame, so therefore they're the ones that are more likely to blame. I think Republicans genuinely believe they can make this the Schumer shutdown. You can hear them spinning like crazy already up on Capitol Hill and at the White House today. You just heard that in John Roberts' report. Conversely, there are a lot of Democrats who think if we don't get a DACA deal now, we're never going to get it, and we got to use the leverage we've got now. But there are splits even within the parties. Let me give you one quick example, Shep. On the Democratic side, you've got the 2018 Democrats. Those are the ones who are running for re-election, particularly those 10 Democrats who won in states that Donald Trump won in 2016. They really don't want, because you're talking about conservative states like Missouri and West Virginia, Montana. They don't particularly want to go to voters and say, we shut down the government to protect the Dreamers. On the other hand, you got the 2020 Democrats, those that are at least a half dozen in the Senate, who look in the mirror and see a potential president, and they want to keep faith and get support from the left wing of the Democratic Party. They are happy to shut down the government over